Today we have discussed the 7 questions of GRE Verbal. Let's begin with the first one. The instructions are given. Each sentence below has 1 or 2 blanks, each blank indicating that something has been omitted. Beneath the sentence are 5-lettered words or sets of words. Choose the word or set of words for each blank that best fits the meaning of the sentence as a whole. Okay, the very first one is non-violent demonstrations often create such tensions that a community that has constantly refused to dash its injustices is forced to correct them. The injustices can no longer be dash. You see now, we have to look for something that is opposite to this word, constantly refused, right, to fill in this blank. And in the same way, if something has been refused, it has been some acknowledged in the other one, right? Also, once it has been acknowledged, so we can say that the injustices can no longer be ignored. I can see the word acknowledge with ignored, right? So A is the answer to the first one. And we can have a look at the other option, decreased and verified. It doesn't fit. Constantly refuse to decrease, so it doesn't fit. Tolerate and accepted, no. Address and eliminated, no. Explain and discussed, no. So the only option that fits here is acknowledged and ignored, and it best fits in the sentence. Non-violent demonstrations often create best tensions that a community that has constantly refused to acknowledge its injustices is forced to correct them. The injustices can no longer be ignored. Okay, moving on to the second one. Since 1813, reaction to Jane Austen's novels has oscillated. You see, sometimes it has been this and sometimes it has been that. Oscillation means to and fro movement. So yes, between dash and condescension. So we are looking for a word that is opposite of condescension, okay, to fit in here. But in general, later writers have esteemed her works more highly than did most of her literary dash, right? So here we are looking for a word in the first blank that is opposite to condescension, that fits here, and in the second one we're looking for something opposite of later writers, the writers that were before and especially in her time. And whenever something exists in someone's time, that is contemporary, right? So this is the best fit for the sentence. Adoration. Adoration means deep love or admiration, which is obviously the opposite of condescension. And contemporaries means in that time, right? So adoration and contemporaries is the best fit for this sentence. Since 1813's reaction to Jane Austen's novels has oscillated between adoration and condescension, but in general later writers have esteemed her works more highly than did most of her literary contemporaries. This is not an option. Disapproval and readers, no. Followers, indifference and followers, no. Approbation and precursors, no. Okay, moving on to the third one. There are as yet no vegetation types or ecosystems whose study has been dash to the extent that they no longer dash ecologists. So you see here, we are talking about something, vegetation type that have been, someone wants to get rid of it, or it has been studied a lot, right? To fill in this blank, no longer dash ecologist, or ecologists would no longer want to or desire to study it, right? So perfected, hinder, no, it doesn't fit. Exhausted, it does means extremely tired or to the extent of being extremely tired, so yes. And interest ecologist. So if we have a look at the sentence, there are as yet no vegetation types or ecosystems whose study has been exhausted to the extent that they no longer interest ecologists. That is the perfect answer. Prolonged and require, no, it doesn't fit. Prevented and challenged, no. Delayed and benefit, no. Right? So B is the option for the third one. Under ethical guidelines recently adopted by the National Institutes of Health, human genes are to be manipulated only to correct diseases for which dash treatments are unsatisfactory, right? So we have to use genes for only for those in which we cannot use other treatments. So alternative is the word here. That was a rather easy one. Alternative treatments are unsatisfactory. Okay, it was her view that the country's problems had been dashed by foreign technocrats, so that to invite them to come back would be counterproductive, right? Which is the opposite of productive. Okay, it was her view that country's problems had been dashed by foreign technocrats. So foreign technocrats, we are looking for a word which is negative, right? We are looking for a negative word that fits in here for the work of foreign technocrats, so that to invite them to come back would be counterproductive, because they're coming and is not being productive for the country as a whole. So we are looking for a negative word here. Foreseen, attacked, ascertained, which means found out or determined. Found out, or we can say determined with certainty after investigation. That's what it actually means. Exacerbated is make worse or worsen the situation. And analyze. So this is the best fit. In her view, it was her view that the country's problems had been exacerbated. We mostly use this for the situations. So exacerbated by foreign technocrats, so that to invite them to come back would be counterproductive. So this is indeed a negative word that best fits here in the blank. Okay, Winsor McCay, the cartoonist, could draw with incredible dash. Incredible dash. Here we're looking for a word that means talent or skill or something of that sort. His comic strip about Little Nemo was characterized by marvelous draftsmanship and sequencing. So we're looking for a word that fits here, which are used for talented people, and virtuosity is the word because it means exceptional skill or talent. Right? Whenever we are looking for words for talented people, virtuosity is the one that comes to mind. Sincerity, no. Rapidity, no. Energy, no. Efficiency, no. This is the best fit. Virtuosity. Okay. Moving on to the last one, which is the seventh one. The actual dash of Wilson's position was always dash by his refusal. Refusal to compromise after having initially agreed. So you see, once initially agreed, he still keeps on refusing to negotiate a settlement. It's kind of a kind of deceiveness or betrayal, I would say. In the last two lines, the actual dash of Wilson's position. So something that is affecting Wilson's position has to be the first word. Outcome and foreshadowed, no. Logic and enhanced, was always enhanced, no. We are not looking for a good word for the second blank. Rigidity means stiffness and inability to bend or to understand. So stiffness And you see, once he, admits to once he initially agreed to negotiate a settlement, but afterwards he kind of refuses it. So it's rigidity that will be in the first blank, and the second blank will be betrayed, because it's kind of a betrayal to first agree and then, step back. Okay, then we have uncertainty and alleviated. We have cowardice and highlighted. So C is the answer to this one.